Welcome, everybody. Here we are for yet another episode of the Corner Blue. We are on episode 28, believe it or not. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. And man, it was a busy weekend, wasn't it? Ooh, I mean, we had the Cali Classico going on with the Galaxy whooping on my Quakes. I was there, saw it in person. It was depressing. But at the same time, La Selecta made its triumphant return to LA. LA had a good party going on, post COVID, the usual Guatemala and Salvador match in LA. It's a clásico in its own right. Typical score line, but I think the main thing is there was such a festive mood from what it appeared like. And then on top of that, just very symbolic that the first match La Selecta plays in the US with its people, with the Hermanos Lejanos. And on top of that, it was something extra special for good old Hugo over here that finally was able to be part of the FESFUT in person, got to meet with his bosses and the coaching staff. Hugo, what was the experience of finally being a part, the full circle from going to super fan to showing up with your badge and walking in for free? How was it?
It's an amazing experience. It's always great. You know me, Andres. I never been the type who really like to be like in the spotlight necessarily, but it always feels nice, to be able to, walk through a special back door without getting in line and being able to access the field and any area of the stadium. So it was great in that sense. Obviously, I got to meet with the president, Hugo Carrillo, the night before. It was, a nice experience. But more than that, I mean, for me, it was just an incredible experience as well to be at that stadium. I had never been at the Bank of California stadium before. I got there a little late. There was traffic, and I was surprised to see that even like 15 minutes into the game, there were like huge lines of fans trying to get in. So just getting there, with this whole COVID situation and seeing the stadium, I would say probably 90% capacity, because I don't think they sold all the seats on purpose. It was just incredible. It was an incredible experience. I really, really enjoyed it. And shout out to one of our fans. If you're listening to our podcast, comment and let us know who you are, because I honestly, it was so loud that I can't remember your name, but it was interesting.
We're so shook to be recognized finally.
I was there. I was at the lounge area of the stadium, and as soon as I got there, someone approaches me. He's like, "Hey, you're the guy from the podcast." I was like, "Oh, that's great. People are listening to the podcast. Obviously, a lot of people know me through Selecta Talent, but in this case, it was like, oh yeah, you're the podcast guy." I was like, yeah. So it was nice, to meet a fan, to know that there's people listening to our podcast. So if you know who I'm talking about, you can comment below so we can give you a shout out in the next episode, because I really don't remember. It was pretty loud, so I don't remember your name. But overall, yes, it was a great experience. Got to meet Armando Moreno in person, who, I've been talking over phone and text for a long time, but it was great to meet him in person, as well as Josh Bettis. And yeah, it was a overall great experience. It motivates me to continue, doing what I'm doing, talking to the Lupita, the press, the national team, FESFUT press representative, and she knew a lot about my work, so that tells me that people know what I do. She was well aware that I had been doing this for years, so it motivates me to continue doing what I'm doing.
Nah, I bet, man. And what was that sensation of just finally sitting down in your role in person? Because obviously you're definitely more behind the scenes. You've been doing that for years of just trying to link people up. But what was it like just being able to take your seat watch the match and then just see, some of the pieces that are there and knowing, this is the work that I've done, or it's finally cool to see it in person, because since you're far away from it all the time, it's not every day that they're in your backyard like they were last weekend.
Yeah, I mean, it's again, I mean, it is kind of surreal sometimes, when, I don't want to take credit for everything because, like I said in the interview that I had with the Federation, what I do has very little worth, value, without the other pieces of the puzzle, which in this case is Diego Enriquez, the Federation, Hugo Perez, and all of them having the openness to what I do and bringing players from the outside to compete with the local talent. So to be able to see, you know, players who I, have scouted, or just to see, like the four U18 guys who I didn't necessarily scout them other than Rios, to see that there's four youth players, American born, who are already being taken into account at a very young age. That was my vision has been my vision for the last 10 plus years, because I think it's important to to get those players at that age when they're not necessarily well known. I mean, Alguera is academy player. The other three players were academy players other than Rios. So it's when those players, if those players obviously make it to MLS, then they already identify themselves with the Salvadorian national team. And it's not necessarily a question about would you be interested or are you interested in playing for the national team, but it's more like you're already part of the national team program. So it's great. It's great. I'm always kind of thinking ahead, like what's next. Like of course I want to continue doing what I do, but what's
Money.
next? Yes, that's always.
Hey, I'm always advocate for that. I'm always gonna mention that. Obviously, not on your behalf, but you deserve it. But yeah, what's next, Hugo?
I don't know. I mean, I always keep my mind open. This is not something that I necessarily have anything real going on right now, but one of the things that I would like to do at some point is to, just like I bring or help bring talent from abroad to El Salvador, I would like to do something in which I can do it the other way around. Not necessarily as an agent, which I've done that, and I know it can be very, very difficult to sell Salvadorian players, but I'm thinking something where I can even get like experiences, like training opportunities for Salvadorian players in MLS or Europe or something like that. It's something that has been in the back of my mind lately. Probably, those critics who say that maybe the players that come from the U.S. are taking an opportunity from a local player have also influenced me in wanting to do something different. Like if we go back maybe 4 or 5 years ago, MLS players during the MLS offseason, they would go to Germany and spend 2 weeks with the German club, only for training purposes. But of course, if they see the talent and the potential, there's always an opportunity for a contract. So I'm thinking something along those lines. And again, it's not, I don't have anything other than the idea at this time, but I know that there are many things that can be done to support the local, the Salvadorian born talent as well.
It's not even a fine line, I guess you would say, but it is an interesting concept that is arising now that it seems that there's been this shift, a dramatic shift, I would say, in comparison to the other coaching staffs in terms of how they view foreign-born Salvadorans and their role in the national team. Because we mentioned, I thought from the get-go it seemed like it was a soft rebuild, considering that Hugo Perez was looking to keep his Alianza core for the most part. But then once you saw him bring in Zabaleta, once you saw him playing around with new center backs to partner with him, and you saw Dominguez kind of being, relegated to maybe the second or third option in terms of being that partner with Zabaleta, there's been a shift, and it's more and more obvious now. And I think, yeah, there, especially with Roldan coming in, who is he going to replace? Is he going to earn his spot gradually, or is his level that much higher than Tamacas or Larin, who have been playing really consistently well on the flanks? Do you just throw him into the pot? And I think that'll be the interesting thing, that we see how Hugo Perez handles it. Because yes, like we've talked with other players, former players or current players, and they mentioned, the Selecta is something you earn. So we'll see how that plays out. Like, what does earning it consist of? Do you earn your dues for your club, or do you earn your dues based off of your level and what you bring to the team? Especially in the case of Roldan, who hasn't debuted yet, and it's going to be, you know, an interesting mix going into that Gold Cup. We have the list that came out, and we'll talk about that shortly. But it will be interesting to see how these different pieces gel, how they manage it, and how they convince each player, whether they're on the list for this trip or this tournament or this camp, microciclo. How do they keep people convinced to believe in this project? That you'll have your turn. There's rotations. That's what I'd like to see, because looking at some of the changes that have occurred, I feel like, and we've mentioned it many times, our mid is stacked. And since we're only playing with three in the middle, that limits, who's going to get those minutes. So how do you keep people involved and believing in this project? And I think that's the main thing that we'll see play out in terms of who gets those minutes, who gets that to be in the starting 11.
So far, based on what I've seen from the coach, he's not afraid to throw a player in there who he thinks can make a difference. He puts a lot of trust in those players. And Enrico Hernandez is an example in which, he was brought in 5 days prior, or less than 5 days prior to the tournament, and he threw him in there as a number 10. And I mean, we're talking about a guy who didn't even speak the language, and he gained the trust of his teammates. So knowing Hugo, I don't think he's going to hesitate. I mean, if you're bringing a player from outside, it's because you already know that that player is can offer more than what you currently have. Obviously, it's going to be, as a right back, is going to be a tough one, because Tamacas has been growing more and more. He's regaining his level, and that's going to be a tough one to bench him. And perhaps, Hugo has a different idea in mind. Roldan can play in the mid as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if both play from the get-go in the Gold Cup. And yeah, I mean, but when we look at Roldan, he's going through a very, very good moment right now with the Sounders. So you're not going to bring a player like that to bench him necessarily, or to say, okay, I'm going to take it easy on him, I'm going to give him 10 minutes. I mean, you do that with a youngster. He did it with Rios. I mean, it just, and this is just a personal opinion based on what I've seen, I think there's a high probability that a player like Roldan will start. Where he will start, I don't know. But we saw Zabaleta 5 days prior to the qualifiers, and there he was as a sub captain, and he started. So, I mean, these are players with a lot of experience, a lot of miles under their wings, and players who are used to playing in the field in the United States against players with a lot of athleticism, like the players from Curacao. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if I see Alex Roldan in the starting 11 in the first game.
Yeah, I think we're venturing into like this new era where you do have these questions, right? Because it had tended to be that you'd see, and even though coaches have been fired along the way, and we've had so many coaches the last 20 years or even more, that there was this buildup, that you'd see like players be filtered in and out, and then boom, when you get to the later stages, you had a mostly solid 11. Let's say, like, just looking back on the different coaches, and I would say starting with De Los Cobos in his first era, how the different stages he used it to do his casting, and then by the time the Hexagonal came along, there were some pretty key absences based off of the other phases, but the 11 gelled. Same thing happened with Roca, where he had to find, a new generation after the Manos, and it seemed that things were gelling and he was trying different pieces out. Unfortunately, he got fired. But then those players continued, right? And I think now with that generation aging out for the most part, it seems, since Hugo's looking to the youth, he's looking to 2026. Since there's so many of the same, players of the same age, similar characteristics, it will be interesting to see which ones adapt the best or fit into his 11. We would love to have as many of, our skilled midfielders in the national team, but the list is either 18 or 23 depending on the competition.
Yeah, like you said, you have to choose, you have to make decisions. I think it's a tough one. It's a good problem for Hugo Perez to have when you have players like Monterrosa, and then you have players like Mayen, and then you have Armando Moreno joining in the mix of players who could potentially play a number 10 position. And then you have to make decisions based on, personal thoughts about where the player can help you, if the player can help you to secondary position based on the lineup. And yeah, and at the end of the day, you have to choose 23. But we're definitely seeing a generational change. I think I haven't really checked on the ages, but we might have 3 players in their 30s, and I think the rest are in their mid 20s to low 20s for the youngest ones. So it's definitely a team with 2026 in mind, and that's the job at hand. And we are luckily in the octagonal, which is going to be a fun one. But 2026 is that's where the vision is, and I think a lot of these players are with that in mind. I mean, other than Monterrosa, who's 30, I believe. Then I think Isaac Portillo he's younger, but Juan Carlos Portillo, I think he's like 20, 27, 28.
I have the list
Tony
right
Rugamas,
here.
Tony Rugamas, who's like 31, 32.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of the players are in the mid 20s or early 20s. So it's a generational change.
Definitely. All right, I'll go over the list in case you haven't read it on social media or you haven't had the time. So for goalkeepers, we have Mario Gonzalez, who seems to be the starting keeper under Hugo Perez, along with Kevin Caravantes from FAS, Oscar Peites from Etapan. Then defenders, we have Eric Zabaleta, who plays for Toronto, Alex Roldan from the Sounders, Ronald Rodriguez from La Isla, Romulo Villalobos from Municipal Limeño, Alexander Larin, who plays for Xelajú, uh, Dominguez, who I think he's still in the process of signing with the team, if I'm not mistaken.
I think Dominguez has already signed with Chalatenango.
Okay.
But a lot of the players who don't have a team, they only says El Salvador, they already have a team, probably with the exception of Renderos. I don't think Alexis Renderos has a team, but it's just like a legal thing where the season hasn't started, so the players are not technically registered yet with their new club, so they're not specifying.
Then we have, as you mentioned, Alexis Renderos, Brian Tamacas, who plays with Alianza. And then in the mid, I think this is where we start to see some of the filtering, or at least kind of playing with pieces. We have the new incorporation of Armando Moreno, who plays for New Mexico United, along with veteran Marvin Monterrosa, who plays for Alianza. And I think the team in the mid is going to be built around him. I think he's at the midfielder with the highest level, I think, out of El Salvador. He's been key. He was key for the Los Cobos, and he's definitely been key for Hugo Perez. So he's in the mix there, along with Jairo Enriquez, who we've seen, rotate between playing as a fullback, but also playing as a wing. Isaac Portillo from Alianza, Narciso Orellana, who's making his return after his injury from Alianza. He and Monterrosa are the dynamic duo for Alianza, and I think Hugo Perez is betting that Narciso will be fit and be able to make his return, since he's been rehabbing his injury. And then we have veteran Darwin Seren, who plays with Houston Dynamo. I think it was predictable that it was going to bring him, considering the experience that Darwin has, not only in the national team, but also playing in the MLS. He's used to the stadiums. He's used to the tempo. I think he's still in search of recovering or making his presence more felt in the mid after that match against Honduras in the last Copa Oro. I feel like Darwin's level in the national team kind of started dropping. So it'll be interesting if he recovers that consistency that he's been known for in the past. Now with your forwards, things get interesting as well. Marvin Marquez, the U23 player under Hugo Perez, was called up to the senior squad, who plays with Metapan, which I think this is the most interesting move, where you had Eric Rivera training with the team. He made his debut against Guatemala. I think he played 15 some minutes, wasn't able to score. A veteran who's played abroad, and Hugo Perez has chosen to go with his 9 from the U23s, which is an interesting move. I personally am not necessarily in agreement with this, just because I feel a player like Eric Rivera, from the little that I've been able to see him play, but highlights obviously, and the consistency that he's had. He has the height. He can move inside the box. He can be a target. From the little I've seen of Marvin with the U23s, he just seemed a little too stagnant. Yeah, he could hold the ball, but his involvement was almost minimal throughout the tournament, with the exception of the goal that he scored. So we'll see if this plays out. I would have preferred a player like Eric Rivera. He's been on the fringe for the national team these last couple of months. On the human side, you kind of feel for the guy, because he's been training nonstop. He was training for a lot, or for several days, with the Los Cobos, and then ended up getting left out of the nomina when they went to go play.
To be Montserrat.
Yeah, when he was left out of the list to go play Montserrat. You felt for the guy, considering that he was told last minute, and now he's been a part of this cycle with Hugo Perez, traveling with the team, made the trip to Europe, but is not going to be included in the Gold Cup. So I think this is another indicator of the direction that Hugo Perez is betting on, at least from the get-go right now. We'll continue with the list. So also Waldemar Martinez, who plays for Hartford Athletic, was called up. Juan Carlos Portillo from Alianza, who is that veteran, has that experience. This is, I would say, his first qualifying round that he's been on the senior squad, but he's made leaps and bounds, especially under the Los Cobos. We have yet to see him reach that level or play that similar role with Hugo Perez. So we'll see how that works out. Then Josh Perez, who plays for Ibiza, was called up as well. I think he's gotten plenty of looks. I've liked what I've seen, but I think there just needs to be a little more consistency to justify him being a regular on the squad. I'm not doubting his level in any way, but it will be interesting to see if he gels a little bit better with the team, because at least the last couple of matches he seemed a little disjointed. But I think that goes into just the midfield trying to figure itself out. Next, we have Tony Rugamas, who has the most amount of goals under the Hugo Perez era, so he had to bring him on the super sub. We'll see if he starts or if he stays in that role as a super sub. And then we have Joaquin Rivas, who, I'm not being sarcastic here, has a ton of fans out of El Salvador, it seems, and in the press. But he's someone that's been consistent. He's someone that has fit into the last two coaches' style, and it's no accident that he's there. So there you have the list. Now we'll break it down, or at least Hugo will give his 2 cents on the new list. So what do you think, Hugo?
I like the list. I mean, again, I can have my personal opinions about probably just a few choices, but it's not my style, and I'm not in a position to speak to that. But
just do it.
But first of all, this is the Gold Cup. There's a qualifier ahead of us, so I'm sure a lot of these players who are not in the final Gold Cup list, like El Rivera, like the Gerson Mayen, they're in the player pool for the qualifiers. For those two players specifically that I mentioned, it probably hurts a little more because it might be their last possibility to play a Gold Cup. But then again, like I said earlier, I think the future is in mind, and a lot of the players that have been chosen are players who are for 2026. You mentioned, that, we see in the base Hugo Perez's player base, and I think defense. I think that's it's getting pretty solid. I mean, it's been Zabaleta with possibly Ronald, Romulo can probably play there alongside Eric Zabaleta, but we had Larin on the left side and we had Tamacas on the right side. Now Tamacas, we'll see where Alex Roldan fits in there. And then the midfield, that's where we've been seeing a lot of different players rotating. I'm not sure if CONCACAF is going to allow the 5 subs that have been allowed due to COVID. But there, that would be the ideal. It would be ideal. It might still be the case, but I don't know. But there, I think, like you said, Monterrosa, I think is a solid player there. Narciso might be, but we have to see how he's doing physically. And honestly, Isaac Portillo, for me, has been doing the dirty work.
Yeah, he's been the revelation.
He's a quiet guy out there, but he does the dirty work, and his physicality helps him a lot. He has pretty decent size. So I like what I've been seeing from him, and I think we're gonna need players like him. He reminds me a little bit of Ramon Sanchez, although Ramon Sanchez had more of a quality touch. Ramon Sanchez was kind of like get ready for a lot of criticism.
Busquets.
like Busquets type of player, where he kind of looks like this guy is a little, not so solid. But then at the end of the day, their job when they're not there is noticeable because of all the balls they recover, because of their vision and their distribution and their timing. But Isaac Portillo has been doing a great job as a number 5. But Narciso's there in the mix, and I think he's gonna get minutes in Croatia to get him fit, because obviously against Guatemala he didn't look that solid. And then Armando Moreno, he can be used as forward, and he can score. Jairo Enriquez, I was pleasantly surprised to see him on against Guatemala. He looks strong. I mean, he's always been a little guy, but it seems like he has really worked on his fitness and gaining some muscle mass, and he hustles and is good, and he's starting to be that Jairo Enriquez again, who had fun playing, who was not afraid to take players one-on-one. It seemed like after the U20 World Cup, someone asked him to play with the handbrake on, and now it seems like he's finally going back to his old style. So I like it. I mean, it's going to be tough. I mean, you also have Darwin Seren, who can play there in the mid. So it's definitely going to be that's where I can't really say these are going to be the starting players. And then up front, and up front, I think Josh Perez has been pretty solid. Personally, I think that we haven't seen his full potential yet. I mean, I'm not saying he hasn't been doing a good job, but he can do much more. I mean, let's also consider that. Yeah, he scored what? He has like 3 goals already.
Yeah.
So I mean, you need players who can score, but I think that Josh, we're gonna see more of Josh, and he can do more. And he wasn't getting a lot of minutes with Ibiza, so he's, I think, getting more into his playing rhythm, and obviously all these games with the national team are going to help him. I think we've seen about 70% of what he's capable of doing, so I'm hopeful that that he's going to shine in the Gold Cup. And then Joaquin Rivas, I mean, personally, I think that he's been one of the most consistent players that we've seen throughout this qualifier. And I know a lot of people, I don't know what they expect from him, but I think the guy does his job. When he has to defend, he defends. When he has to attack, he attacks. He's a fast player who can score goals. And I mean, it depends on how we play, right? I think Josh is going to play on the right side, and potentially Joaquin on the left. And I think, given what the moment that Rugamas is having, he's going to be the 9. I think the center forward. Marvin Marquez is not in Croatia right now, as far as I know.
Yeah, I don't think so, because this list was given today, and Marcelo Diaz, and there's a couple players that are out there. That
Marcelo Diaz is out there, but he's not in the Gold Cup list. But I'm glad to see that Marvin is getting his opportunity. Like you said, when Eric Rivera came in against Guatemala, his physical presence was very noticeable and important, and I thought he was going to be in the list. He's not, and I think that's one of the criticisms that Hugo is going to get. But there might be something to it. I mean, De Los Cobos didn't take him either. Now Hugo's not taking him either. I mean, there are many variables that coaches consider before choosing a player, especially when you have to make a decision to only include 23. Marvin Marquez might be a vision for the future. I mean, I always thought that El Puma Peña would be that player. And as we know, El Puma Peña didn't really get many opportunities after the U20 Gold Cup. So perhaps, Marvin can get, that confidence boost that a young player needs so that he can become the number 9 that we haven't had in a while, who's big, who can really win balls up in the air, who can really go and fight against big defenders. And then Walmer Martinez, I think we've seen that he can do a lot. He doesn't have the experience yet. He's still gaining experience. The good news is that he started his last 2 games for Hartford Athletic after being with the national team. Before that, he wasn't getting many minutes, so that's a good sign that he's progressing in his career and his experience, and he can play up front. He can possibly play as a number 9 as well. He's a big guy. And then Juan Carlos Portillo's experience, he's been doing well. So overall, it's a pretty solid list. It's always going to be like each person is a different world, right? I mean, there's always going to be people who ask for certain players, but at the end of the day, you have to choose 23, and the coach is responsible for the team, and he knows what's best for what he's trying to achieve.
Considering that the way that things have been planned out, and it's almost been ideal in the sense that they've gotten those 2 matches in Croatia. Hugo Perez hopefully will try out some of these guys that he didn't include in the list for Copa Oro to get an idea of how they react. But having the Copa Oro, we need to be realistic. It's not like it's within the plans to win this thing. I think the best thing that they can do is look at it for what it is, and it's basically a snippet into these high intensity matches, and treat them as these glorified friendlies, because no matter what happens during those 3 games, you still have September right around the corner. And obviously that you have September right around the corner, and that's the goal, the immediate goal, in the sense of having a squad fine-tuned to compete in that tournament. Doesn't take away the excitement of the Gold Cup. I know it's one of those weird tournaments. It's every 2 years. It's very quirky. It's definitely has CONCACAF's signature and trademark written all over it, with some of the weird rules, some of the weird things that have happened throughout the years. But it's the closest we get to the World Cup. We can't deny that. It's whether we like it or not, it's that opportunity that comes every 2 years where we get to see La Selecta compete at the highest level regionally, considering that the hexagonal, now the octagonal, hasn't been a guarantee for El Salvador. We've always had that tournament to look forward to, and especially people that live in the U.S. or can make the trip out to the U.S. for that tournament. It's an excuse to be able to see your national team in the U.S., really nice stadiums, really nice atmosphere. So I think there's only positives that you can get out from the tournament. It would be amazing to see La Selecta make it past the 3rd match, maybe for the first time in its history, get past. I think it would be the first time in history, right, of getting past the round of 16. Right? Am I wrong with that? I think so, right?
I think so. I mean, I'm trying to think if we did that in the early Gold Cups, but I'm not sure.
We've gotten close to Copa UNCAF. I know we got 3rd place when it was played in El Salvador in 1995, if I'm not incorrect. But yes, El Salvador's made it to quarters, right? Quarters, and then it just hasn't been able to make it beyond that. So, I mean, it'll be a fun ride. I think more than anything, it's an opportunity for Perez to get to know his players, considering that there's a few that haven't even made their debuts yet. Some of them haven't made their debuts or have limited minutes with the first team. So I think it's just a perfect opportunity to gel together, because if it weren't for this opportunity, things would be looking, I think, a little dicey leading into the Octagonal. I think this is a perfect opportunity to fine tune, get that rhythm, get that cohesiveness, and ride out the positive wave that seems to be going on with Hugo Perez's hiring. I feel like if the Los Cobos era were to continue, it would have just, the negativity would have kept rolling through, and that's the last thing you need when you're about to face, the top 7 countries in your region trying to vie for those 3.5 spots to the World Cup.
Yeah, the change was good, for many reasons. Even when De Los Cobos was still around, one of my thoughts was this team really needs to get away, because of all the internal differences that were going on with the national team. When teams go away, so like a place like Croatia, where you have to be in a hotel, where I don't know what the COVID restrictions are, and maybe you're not really allowed to go out. Because when the players come to the US, a lot of those players have families. They go to their families' homes, or they go out to eat. Or I'm not saying that's the case this time, because I don't really know what the protocols are within the national team. But what I'm saying is that when you go out and experience being in a foreign country, and you kind of have to bond. It's like there's no other way around. You have to bond with your teammates. And I thought, back with the Los Cobos team, that given everything that was going on with the national team, that would have been good to kind of get away from everything, from all that pressure, all that media, all that criticism and the drama. And I'm glad to see them now in a completely different scenario. The new national team, with a lot of young players who probably never traveled before, most likely never been to Europe before, are there in a hotel in Croatia, and they're having that opportunity to bond, to train, and have a couple of pretty good high-level matches. So it's good. It's good. I mean, it's a different energy with a different coach, and I'm really looking forward to it. I mean, I know the qualifiers are the main event, but like you said, the Gold Cup, for some reasons, probably not necessarily. I mean, in terms of the level, yes, it is probably at the highest level we can play, aside from the qualifiers, which are different. Obviously, high level, and you're playing for the World Cup. It's huge, but you get to play in one host country with a few venues, top-notch venues, where the games are televised on national and international TV, where you have a lot of MLS scouts looking at those players. And I'm sure a lot of the Salvadorian players are going to end up in some discovery list for a few MLS teams. It is a top level tournament for us. And yes, given the circumstances, we're not really aiming to win the Gold Cup. I mean, we've never done it. It would be nice if we can move past the group stage, and have more opportunities for the players to play together and gain experience. But at the end of the day, with the current generation that we have, which is fairly new, a lot of players are new in national team stage. The goal should be to make the best out of the tournament, for the coach to get to experience the different formations that he wants to utilize in the qualifiers, to see how he can counteract certain difficult situations, perhaps you're down a score against a team that you thought you should be winning. So what do? And you get to experience that. You get to move your pieces around and get to see how players can help you when you're playing the qualifiers. So it's I'm going to enjoy it. I always, even though it's every 2 years, I always get very sad when we don't make it past a certain stage. But in this case, we have September around the corner, so I'm looking forward to that, and I think it's going to be a great experience for our players. And I mean, top level matches. Curaçao is not an easy rival. I mean, they are a team. If you look at Curaçao's roster, it has been the same roster consistently for the last two Gold Cups. So those players are used to playing together, and a lot of those players play in the Netherlands, and they're a good team. They're a good team, and that game is gonna. I think that game is gonna be key for our aspirations in the Gold Cup.
Yeah, the Gold Cup's looking like a really good appetizer for the qualifiers. Nonetheless, just we've been fortunate this year to have so many games back to back or within a short span of time that how can you not be stoked to watch, potentially five matches for La Selecta in the span of I'd say almost 3 weeks. Starting with tomorrow, I know they have their friendly. Who is it against? I know it's a club in Croatia. Do you know the name of the club?
Oh, I can remember right
Yeah,
now.
I'll look that up. I'll look up at your post.
It is NK Istra, 1961.
And at what time? Do you know?
19 hours local time. So
Local
that's
time.
7 p.m. local time. I think that's
About 10,
9 a.m.
10 or 9. Yeah.
LA or West Coast Pacific time. And the game is going to be on the official YouTube page for that club. And the game against Qatar has been announced by Canal 4. So more soccer.
For sure. No, I think that's how it's going to be on YouTube. It's always kind of dicey trying to find the TCS link here in the US, but that's what the internet's for. So I think if we end up finding it, we'll be sharing it along the way with all of y'all. Quick comment. Obviously, the Enrico situation was cleared up where he's going to be focusing on preseason with this club Vitesse, and that's something that we've talked about here, which is just it makes sense with the fact that Puñeda's side, he's like our only guy in Europe, except Puñeda is well established in his team, in his league, and Enrico is on the fringe, and I think it would have been great to see him in the Gold Cup, but with the player on the fringe and at his level, his stage of development, I think it just makes sense for him to focus on the club right now, considering all the options as well that are available in the midfield. And like we've mentioned, it's a great problem to have, just being stacked in the mid and having to figure out those pieces because there's at least 5-7 players that could easily be called up into the mid going forward. But I just wanted to mention that they came out saying that he's going to focus on preseason. I think it makes the most sense considering what this Gold Cup means, and his stage and his development. I like Enrico. I like what I've seen, but I would not want to see this kid being burnt out at the ripe age of 20, right? Flying from Europe over here and maybe not getting too many minutes or getting burnt out. And we'll see how that develops. I think it's just the matter of letting this kid, figure out his situation at his club because that's where you earn your bread. And I think Enrico down the line, a starter or a key piece for a club in Europe sounds a lot more enticing or a lot more valuable to La Selecta than a kid that was on the fringe, had to decide basically between a Selecta and his club and the Eredivisie, and things not panning out. And unfortunately, Salvadoran players get stuck in that type of situation where it's not so easy to be able to balance club and country. So, I think it was dealt, in the best way possible. And, we'll look forward to seeing Enrico later on, whether it's this octagonal or along the way. But just like Hugo Perez kind of planted that seed with those U18 players, calling them up, along with some of those U23 players, whether they made the final roster or not, or have been called up to the senior squad, like Gilbert Fuentes, Calvillo. It's about planting these seeds, bringing them in, but knowing when to. So I think it's a good decision that, whoever made it, I think it's a good decision that Enrico focuses on where he's at and gets fit for his season.
As fans, right? And as people who want the best for La Selecta, we want Enrico to be there. But you also have to look at the situation. Preseason just started. This is his first preseason with the club. Preseasons are important especially for players like him. I was surprised to see him start yesterday in the squad that Vitesse used, because it usually has been, and I mean, I've been following Vitesse very closely. So it's usually Tanan, the Moroccan international, Dutch Moroccan international, who has played in La Liga, who is their star player. That is probably their most important player, Usama Tanan. He's the starter number 10. And Enrico has a tough battle there. It's going to be a long league cup and Europa League. But I was pleasantly surprised to see him starting along with Usama Tanan. So that tells me that the coach is really considering Enrico for perhaps other positions. I think he played as a left mid yesterday, and he did a really good job. So I was
the assist, right?
He got the assist in the corner kick. So I like seeing that, because it tells me the coach is not limiting Enrico to only playing as a number 10, but Enrico's a player who can play anywhere in the mid. Obviously, number 10 is where he feels the most comfortable, but he can play as a number 9 as well, and as a number 7. So it was nice to see both starting, and yes, I'd rather a year from now talk about calling up a player who is regularly playing in the Eredivisie than having a player who plays for a national team right now, and then he goes back to the Netherlands and he doesn't play. And then 2 years from now he's out of contract, and that's it. Which can happen. So it's a fine line between your club and the national team, and you want to do both, but you have to decide. And I have to give props to the federation, to Diego Enriquez, to Hugo Perez, for the way that they have managed the situation in a very professional way, in the way it should be when you have the best interest for the national team in mind, where you're not letting your ego drive your decisions and your comments and whatever you say to the public, right? Because we've seen in the past, oh yeah, so-and-so said they don't want to come, and we know how that goes. So I'm glad the situation was managed in a very professional way. And what I can tell the fans, because I still get a lot of comments from people saying he's regretting playing for the national team, or he's waiting for Finland to call him or the Netherlands to call him. And yes, it's true that Finland knocked on the door and it was too late. And Enrico has a commitment with El Salvador. Number 2, Enrico is committed. He's committed at heart, not only legally. Now I think his heart is in El Salvador. He's very proud of the decision that he made. He's very proud in representing his father and himself, as a Salvadorian. And number three, Enrico already made the one-time switch that FIFA allows from the Netherlands to El Salvador. So he's a Salvadorian player. And like Diego Enriquez said, he's going to be an important player for the national team for the next 10 to 12 years. So looking forward to that. I'm going to miss him in the Gold Cup. I think a lot of us are going to miss seeing him because we want to see him. He's the player right now playing in one of the most important leagues in Europe, Salvadorian player. So we want to see him make his debut for the senior squad. I'm also looking forward to seeing his dancing when he makes the debut in the senior squad.
See him do the Dougie or something else. Maybe La Tordelote.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, the opportunity is gonna come. He said, he's ready. He will be ready for the qualifiers if the coach wants to consider him for that. So perhaps we'll be seeing him in September. And the league starts in August, and the Europa League starts before that, I believe. So we're gonna know who they're playing in the Europa third stage. I think in mid-July is when they do the draw for the Europa League. So it will be exciting to see who they get matched with.
Well, and I think we're gonna wrap it up with that. There you have it, folks. We've been able to chat about Hugo's experience, finally being a part of the federation in his new role, and finally doing it in person, and the feelings that he had with that, and also the COVID survival tour of just being able to go back to stadiums, be with fans, be with fellow fans, be amongst the people. I was at PayPal Park in San Jose. There were some Salvadoran fans there for the Cali Clasico. It was nice to see people out there. Unfortunately, Chicharito scored a lot, so that was a bummer. In any case, it's been a great week. Last week, we survived the Umbro Gate with the jerseys being confiscated in customs out in Cincinnati, and seeing that develop. And it's just funny. We see photos and we're told that they're chavelas, but then they turn out to be the actual ones. But then just that bad impression of seeing the photos and associating them with being bootlegged or counterfeit, I think was kind of a bad launch to those, or a bad leak. But in any case, it was fun interacting with all you fans about your opinions on the new kit. I still think that Umbro needs to step it up a little bit. I've liked some of the training kits that they've made for La Selecta along the way, but the last couple of game kits, have left a little to be desired. And then it was cool seeing the long sleeve jerseys in the game against Guatemala. I noticed that for the first time, and seeing a lot of the players chose to wear long sleeves. Long sleeves are kind of going away in a sense, but it was nice to see that. And I almost thought that the long sleeve shirt just looks a little bit better than the new one that they're going to be playing with soon. But in any case, we'll keep our eyes open to see when those kits are available, and if you like it, go cop it. Unfortunately, we don't have any sponsors yet, but if you want us to give your business a shout out, to send you some Salvadoran fans to go buy their kits, we'll be waiting. So that's it, everybody. Thanks again for joining with us, interacting with us, following us, listening, subscribing, all that good stuff. I'm Andres Rico. I'm here with Hugo Alvarado. This is the Corner Blue, where Salvadoran fans can come together and talk about all this great stuff going on with La Selecta. Because, again, fasten your seatbelts. Once again, this month is going to be a fun ride, and even better stuff is on the horizon. So let's enjoy it, everybody. And we'll be chatting with you along the way on our Twitter, our Instagram, Facebook. I like posting the videos, but I'm not gonna lie, I feel like people like the Instagram posts and the Twitter posts a little bit better. But
follow us on Facebook.
Yes.
Follow us on MySpace.
Yeah. Shout out to Tom once again. But in any case, again, Hugo, congrats on that first experience. That must have felt amazing. I'm really happy for you, man. And on that note, take it easy, everybody, and we'll be seeing you. I think we'll record a little bit before the Gold Cup. What do you think?
Definitely.
All right. Well, that's it, everybody.